All right, Alan Dershowitz, but first this.
And today, after completing this exhaustive process, I've made my decision. I've selected a nominee who is widely recognized not only as one of America's sharpest legal minds, but someone who brings to his work a spirit of decency, modesty, integrity, even-handedness, and excellence. Today I am nominating Chief Judge Merrick Garland to join the Supreme Court.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, now let's welcome in the one and only Alan Dershowitz, professor at Harvard Law School, Newsmax Contributor, and noted criminal defense attorney. Hello, Alan.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for doing this. So, your reaction to the president's announcement today?
Well, the president's 100% right. He's about the most qualified person to serve on the Supreme Court. He has everything you want in a justice. 18 years of experience on the Court of Appeals, experience as a prosecutor, as a private lawyer, top of his class, Harvard College, Harvard Law School. Just an all-around terrific person who, if not for the politics, would probably be unanimously approved by the Senate. Now, look, the Democrats did the same thing, and if the shoe were on the other foot, they might do the same thing now. It's time for the people to say to both political parties, enough politics on the Supreme Court. Let's do what the Constitution mandates. President nominates, the Senate advises and consents. The Senate has advised. Now it has to consent or refuse to consent. But this idea of blocking the nomination is so inconsistent with the Constitution. And I want to issue a challenge here to my former student, Ted Cruz, who was running as the constitutional candidate. I want to know what you think of the Senate refusing to perform its constitutional duty.
Okay, so is your challenge for him to urge they go through the confirmation process, or just for him to weigh in? I'm sure he'll weigh in.
No, let him weigh in first and let him explain how, as a constitutional scholar, he can justify what his colleagues are going to do in the Senate, and what he will probably do, because he's still part of the United States Senate. How can he justify not doing what he's supposed to do under the Constitution, advising and consenting? The Constitution doesn't provide for not doing anything. The Senate has a job to do, and it should do it. 2/3 of the American people want the Senate to have hearings and have an up and down vote, and that should happen. And there's no excuse to say the Democrats did it too. A plague on both their houses. They're both wrong when it comes to the Constitution.
But there is nothing in the Constitution that forces them to hold a hearing in any given amount of time.
Well, that would be the same as saying there's nothing in the Constitution that requires the president to nominate a Supreme Court justice. He could just keep it vacant. Obviously, that would be in violation of the spirit of the Constitution. The Constitution has a process, and the process doesn't say the Senate can advise, consent, or refuse to advise and consent. The Constitution is very clear, and I think Ted Cruz, if he remembers his course in constitutional law and his course with me, would clearly have to say that the Senate can simply not do anything, can refuse to act at all on a political basis and wait for the next president to be nominated. All the Republicans have done so far in justification is to cite the Democrats. That doesn't persuade people like me, and it doesn't persuade the American public. 2/3 of the American public want them to act, and I think we ought to get together, Americans, and say it's time for the Constitution to prevail over the Democrats and the Republicans.
How about this coming from a president who admitted that Samuel Alito was well qualified but voted to filibuster? Also a president who admitted that Justice Roberts was well qualified and voted no.
He's wrong. The president was dead wrong on both of those votes. Wronger on the Alito vote than on the Roberts vote. The Senate is allowed to say no. I don't think that it was right to say no for Chief Justice Roberts. He was extraordinarily well qualified, even though I disagree with many of his opinions, and he's turned out to be quite a good Chief Justice. So the president was wrong, the vice president was wrong, and that's not a good enough reason for the Republicans to be wrong. Two wrongs don't make a right.
Are you surprised that he didn't pick, and some liberal groups are saying this, that why didn't he pick an African-American woman or minority woman, or at least a minority? Are you surprised that he didn't?
I'm pleasantly surprised. I think it's about time we stopped picking people based on their race, gender, ethnicity, or political views, and go back to what Herbert Hoover did when he appointed Benjamin Cardozo to replace Oliver Wendell Holmes. He said, I don't care if he's a Democrat. I don't care what his politics are. I want the most qualified judge in the United States to serve on the Supreme Court. It's the same thing when John Marshall was appointed to be the fourth Chief Justice and the greatest Chief Justice in American history. He was picked by a lame duck president, John Adams, over the strong objection of Jefferson, who had already been elected president. And Adams went on to serve for many, many years with great distinction. I'm sorry, Marshall did. We have to stop politicizing the nomination process to the Supreme Court.
All right,
and it's not good enough to say both sides do it. It's just not good enough.
Do you believe that when push came to shove, they told Garland, you're basically a sacrificial lamb here? Because you don't see any way that the Senate is going to reverse course here and actually have a vote, do you?
Well, I think if enough people in the American public demand a vote, that might be politically advantageous for them to do so. Already we're seeing a couple of Republican senators falling away. I hope we'll see more. I'm waiting to hear from Ted Cruz. But I don't think he's a sacrificial lamb. If and when Hillary Clinton gets nominated, she may look to him as a potential nominee. And he should not be playing politics with this. He's been nominated. He should seek to go through the process, go through the FBI checks. And I would hope the Senate would come to their senses and finally agree to do the right thing. And then set a precedent that the Democrats would have to follow, because someday the same tactic will be used against a Republican president who's nominating to the Supreme Court. And the ultimate losers are the American people.
All right, Alan, great to talk to you, sir. Thank you very much.